All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. It's Friday. It's the free-for-all, so I really hope you'll call in. And even if you don't, I do have some criticism lodged by one of my most loyal listeners who often does take me to task, sometimes fairly in my view, other times more often in my view, unfairly, obviously. They would have a different position and say, no, the criticisms I lodge are eminently just. That's up to you, obviously, to decide. I hope I'll hear from you. I want to talk to you. That's why we do this. And my critic, you'll hear from towards the end of this live stream, will explain, I guess, why they believe, he believes that I don't get the calls and I don't get the viewership that I want or that I certainly believe I deserve. I thought the thoughts were very interesting and instructive. I don't completely disagree with them. I'm not sure if it's exactly criticism or I'm doing something wrong, but he may well explain some data that I find unfortunate. Let's start, as I have been pretty much on every live stream recently, where the victims are the people that are being oppressed, persecuted, killed. That would be Gaza. So go-to source is Al Jazeera, and there was just posted, it says 4:18 Greenwich Mean Time, so that's 5 hours, it's 5 hours later there, so a little less than, I think if I do my math right, a little more than, because it would be, I don't know, a little more than an hour ago. Gaza death toll rise, it says 6 minutes ago, I think it's about an hour ago now when I got when this was posted. Gaza death toll rises. 34,943 Palestinians have been killed. That's the identified dead. In other words, we found the bodies. It doesn't mean they're all identified as people by name, by location, by identity. It means they've been identified as dead. The bodies have been found. And we know there are many, perhaps thousands more under the rubble whose bodies have not even been recovered yet and are not included in that count. So 20 plus times the number of Israelis. That's the disproportionality. That's really what we're looking at as a genocide, where there's collective guilt being attributed to all the Gazans, all the Palestinians for what happened on October 7. Of course, there's no collective guilt allowed against Israel for its ongoing persecution, apartheid, and now genocide against the Palestinian people. Anyone who would suggest that there's some sort of collective responsibility for it would be called an anti-Semite. So it's interesting, that double standard, just so pernicious and so harmful, and has led to what we're seeing right now, which is just wholesale massacres against the Gazans. It's heartbreaking for me as a Jew to see my co-religionists. Well, it would be heartbreaking anyway. I mean, I don't want to see anyone killed, but when it's at the hand of fellow Jewish people, it's especially painful for me. If you said to me, well, which would be worse, seeing the Jews slaughtered or seeing the Palestinians slaughtered? Because that's what some claim, right, is the option, right? It's, well, look what they did to us. We have to do it to them first, right? That's what the point is. And, my answer is none of the above. Actually, what we're doing in Gaza, when I say we, what Jewish people and the United States government is doing, what Israel and the U.S. government is doing in Gaza, is making all Jews in the end less safe. And certainly it's awful for it's a moral atrocity by those who are committing it. 39 people killed every day, dozens more, maybe hundreds more killed by the Israeli military. There's just no other way to frame it. It's just great evil, a moral crime. It's a crime that will resound through the ages. People are going to remember this through the generations, what Israel's doing right now. And those who defend it, those who support it, are going to be complicit. All right, if you want to join me, love to hear from you. 240 242-5646. I have been saying over and over and over, you have to vote for Jill Stein for president. And that's regardless of where you live. I don't care if you're in Michigan. I don't care if you're in an absolute, completely purple state that's hanging in the balance, and the election in November is hanging in the balance. You just, at this point, it is not morally defensible to vote for Joe Biden. It just is not. And one person is speaking with great moral clarity about this, and that's the one I want you to vote for. Jill Stein, Dr. Jill Stein. Here she is, the Green Party candidate. I understand from my sources that the Green Party will be on the ballot in every state except possibly New York. That's the one state they're really still very worried about. If you get a chance, if you're in your state, you can go out and collect signatures to put Stein on the ballot. Please do that. That would be a great thing to do right now. That would be one of the best things anyone can do, to try to end this moral catastrophe. Because I'll tell you what, the pressure on Biden to actually stop what Israel is doing, or do everything in his considerable power to stop Israel, will only happen. He'll only do something. He'll only take meaningful action. So far, there have been some performative steps. I do welcome the pause in the bomb shipment, but as we've been over, that's not going to stop Israel. That's not enough. Israel has plenty of weaponry already stored, ready to go, ready to kill tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, perhaps 1 million or more Gazans. They're ready to go, and they don't need our weaponry. Only decisive action by the U.S. military to actually intervene to stop Israel can end this killing. And I do hope, maybe Joe Biden will say, if I want to get reelected, I've got to stop Israel. The other side of that, of course, is he's getting stabbed in the back by his own party, the extremists in the Democratic Party, Republican demagogues, anti-Semites. Many of them are using this, willingness by Biden to make very milquetoast statements critical of Israel, using that to bash Biden. Of course, the hypocrisy is amazing, because these are people who don't like Jews, but they will use the issue, of course, against him if they can. So I get it. Biden's in sort of a tough place if he wants to get reelected. And the answer to that is then do the right thing. The right thing is to do everything you can, which is quite considerable, to stop Israel.
This invasion of Rafah, which has begun and which can get a whole lot worse, it needs to stop now. This is blood on Joe Biden's hands, more blood on Joe Biden's hands. He can stop all of this in the blink of an eye by simply telling Israel that it's over. All of our support, the weapons, the money, the diplomatic cover, the air defense against incoming missiles for Israel, all of this needs to stop now until such time as Israel ends its assault on Gaza, ends its assault on Rafah. There are some 600,000 children that have been concentrated in Rafah, along with about 1.5 million people who've been basically herded like cattle into this small area where they are now set up like fish in a barrel for the assault from Israel.
All right, so I'm going to stop it there for a minute, but I'll get back. But speaking with absolute moral clarity, no ambiguities, no mincing words, Dr. Jill Stein for president.
This is kind of the final chapter here, the grand finale to Israel and Joe Biden's genocide. It belongs to both of them. This wouldn't be happening without the support of the U.S. president, who needs to act like a commander-in-chief, not a secretary for Bibi Netanyahu.
All right, I want to stop it again, and I'll finish off with Dr. Stein. But one thing that really touches me is you can hear in Dr. Stein's voice how upsetting, how devastating it is for her to contemplate the destruction, the killing, the loss of life wrought by Israel. And it's heartbreaking for her. And that's meaningful to me. Now I know, look, people can act, right? You can believe, someone can pretend to care when they don't. I am confident she really does care. We had that clip we played yesterday from Mayor Bowser talking about how the DC police cleared out the encampment at George Washington University on, I guess it was Wednesday morning. And you could tell she didn't believe a word she was saying. Oh, it was dangerous. We had to take action to protect. It wasn't partisan. It wasn't because I had to go speak before the Republican House subcommittee if we didn't clear them out. And she just, was just reading lines in a very robotic fashion. And I think probably to a degree she was like, I want people to know I'm full of crap. I want people to know that we didn't really need to clear this out, because she didn't believe in it from the beginning, and everything the whole way she acted throughout that encampment issue, which by the way has returned, and we'll talk about that in a bit, was clearly political. It wasn't because she has strong feelings one way or the other about the encampments. Dr. Stein cares, and it comes through in this video. And therefore, you should care. You should care that she become our next president.
This needs to end. It needs to end now. These children are largely injured, sick, malnourished, traumatized, disabled. They cannot be moved. They should not be shuttled to yet another refuge. While the tents that they're living in are now being struck by missiles from Israel, this is just insane. This is horror, compounding horror. And Joe Biden is pretending to be helpless. Apparently, he's now talking about withdrawing or withholding some weapons if Israel goes forward. This is not the time to talk about what you're going to do. This is a time to do it right now.
All right. So really powerful stuff from Dr. Stein. I really appreciate it. I do think you should vote for her. I don't think there's any other real option at this point. You have to vote pro-peace. You have to vote pro-life, pro-Palestinian life. And there's no option but her at this point. So let's join forces and support her. I know Dr. West is on the ballot, or he may be, maybe he's not, but he's demonstrated, really incompetence, I believe, in terms of running for president. And I don't see he's a legitimate option at this point. One of the arguments I've heard that I guess is considered a defense of Israel and the U.S. support for Israel is, well, there's some bad things going on. It's not good, but it's not genocide. It's not genocide. They're not trying to kill every single Palestinian. That's an argument I've heard, and I find it reprehensible, ugly. I mean, how many have to be killed, or how many does Israel have to target? How many children? How many civilians? How many homes does Israel have to destroy for you to say, okay, enough, basta? It is genocide. It's a deliberate targeting of innocent people based on their ethnicity, based on where they reside. A desire to eradicate a very significant large group of people. Where identifiable people, what do you have to see? And one of the arguments has been, well, it's only the Gazans that Israel's really trying to eradicate, exterminate. It's not all Palestinians. Well, that's just not the case. And you can see here this story from Al Jazeera. I'll play the video in a second. It's really terrifying. Israeli extremists set fire to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, and I did myself a favor by putting on the slide. You can't see it, but I'll blow it up a little bit. The actual title of the agency, because I knew I would forget what UNRWA stands for, and that is the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, forced to close its East Jerusalem compound. So these are refugees from, it's in East Jerusalem, so that's for the West Bank of the Jordan River, which is actually the West Bank east of Jerusalem, where the settlements have been moving forward with increasing speed, dispatched the Jewish settlements that have displaced Palestinians, have led, or a part and parcel of that is riots by Israeli Jewish settlers against the Palestinians who've been living there for decades, for millennia, really, with the either tacit or active support of the Israeli military. And now, because this agency has provided some documentation of Israeli atrocities, because it has provided some help, some support for the victims of Israeli oppression, it's been targeted. We've actually got a video here, so I want to show it to you. The actual, it's terrifying. Again, I don't want to say that words fail, but they kind of do. You just heard a little bit of clip from it. Let me get this up for you. So here it is. This is from Al Jazeera. I guess there were some Palestinians or Muslims or maybe just pro-human rights people who caught this on video and shared it with Al Jazeera.
UNRWA זה חמאס, UNRWA זה חמאס, UNRWA זה חמאס, UNRWA זה חמאס, UNRWA זה...
So I'm not sure what that means. I guess he's saying long live Hamas, or, let's support Hamas. And for those who are saying, well, oh, they deserve it, they support Hamas. Well, of course, this agency that is being burned to the ground, that is actually, they are a humanitarian aid agency being burned to the ground by Zionist extremists in Israel. Of course they're going to be creating people who hate Israelis, who want to kill Israelis, who are going to support Hamas. Of course, that's the exact result we can all have foreseen. And that's why I say what Israel is doing is making Jews around the world less safe. And if you say, well, it's not the Israeli government, it's not the Israeli military that's burning down the UN agency, the hell it isn't. They're being pushed by the Israeli government, and there's certainly no repercussions. You don't see police stepping in. You don't see anyone trying to stop it.
Hamas.
So the Palestinians in Israel watching Zionists, they are extremists, burn down an agency that's there to try to help them. And now here's the Israelis, burn down the UN, burn down the UN. Now that's what I would call hate speech. That's what I would call, I don't know if I'd say it's Islamophobic, but it's certainly hate speech against Palestinians. Burn down any agency that tries to help these people. We've talked about the protesters. By the way, again, please call in. Love to hear from you. 240-242-5646. It is the free-for-all, so that really means you have an obligation to call me. So if you are watching now live, which it's 51 minutes after the hour, do me a favor. Give me a call. Love to talk to you, and I think it would make for a better program as well to hear your voices, especially if you don't agree with me. I think it's important to hear from a multiplicity of perspectives. So I want to hear someone who doesn't share my views on this. I've talked about how I believe the only hope we may have, or some are saying the only hope we may have, for some kind of restoration of freedom, of democracy, of some kind of moral authority in our country is through these protesters against the Israeli genocide, against the support of powerful, affluent American institutions. And I do think that's very understandable, that position. And because we all are holding out hope, right? We all want something. We want something to believe that, that change can come. I think a lot of people, people say, well, how could anyone support Trump? How could you support Trump? He's so awful. He's so evil. He's the Antichrist. He's Satan. Well, I don't like Trump. He's not a good guy. He's done a lot of bad things. People are desperate. We're hopeless. We don't know where to turn. And for many, Trump appears to be a lifeline in an uncaring, amoral universe where both parties have consistently told you you're on your own. There's no help for you. Don't expect it. Can't afford health care. Getting gouged by the for-profit healthcare industry. Can't afford to send your kid to college. Wish I could help. That's the message we're sending to the American people. Both parties, the duopoly. Trump got that. He ran in 2016, which is completely forgotten, against the Republican establishment, which, again, completely morally bankrupt. That's how he won. He ran against the... what's funny is people criticize him for that as though that was a bad thing, running against the Republican. This is the torture establishment, right? Not that Trump is presumably anti-torture. I don't believe he is at all. But he ran against the pro-torture establishment. And now somehow he's reviled because he was, because what? Liz Cheney doesn't like him. That somehow is a positive for Trump. It just makes a negative for Trump. They're all bad people, right? And the people on the left supposedly are bad people too. So the hope we have, and I say they're bad because they're not helping you. They're not trying to make life better for working people. Or if they are, it's to do the very least they can do necessary that they think to win, to get reelected. But when push comes to shove, they vote for Mike Johnson to stay as Speaker of the House. When push comes to shove, they vote for Hakeem Jeffries to be their leader. When push comes to shove, they criticize Joe Biden because he paused for a moment the delivery of 3,500 bombs that would be used for genocide. All right, pro-Palestine protesters return to GWU day after police break up encampment. So it's tremendous. I mean, wow. Can you believe that? I mean, they got pushed around, shoved around by the police, booked, and then they're like, nope, we're not going to take it. We're not going to take it in this sense. We're not going to change. We're going to keep doing what we've been doing because it's the right thing to do. And because we have to speak out against genocide. And so I give them an inordinate amount of credit. And for those who say, oh, this is a coddled generation, they're snowflakes. The people who are the snowflakes are the ones who are saying, oh, no, I don't feel safe. I don't feel safe walking through that encampment. There was nothing not to feel safe about. So I give them just all the credit in the world for what they did. Let's see if we can get this video up for you. See, here we go. So just one sec. I'll get it for you. Just looking in the other direction. Stop Mr. Flanagan here. And we'll go right to it. Go. Ooh.
Palestinian protesters returned to campus at George Washington University. DC News Now's Tosin Fikile joining us live right now at the scene there. And Tosin, this comes after DC police cleared their encampment and arrested 33 people just yesterday.
Well, Chris, we've gotten a lot closer to where the protesters are on F Street and 19th Street. Let me step off the shot to paint you a better scene. This is the crowd right here. They have been continuing with their chants. I walked amongst them a little bit. They're actually tents right here on the street. They have been doing their chants, Free Palestine. I was talking to some of them earlier, and they say they are determined to be here and will be here as long as they can. They are surrounded, though, by a lot of police presence. Every corner around this area has a lot of police presence. I'm going to talk to one of the protesters here. I'm with Selena, and Selena tells me she has been here for the entire time of the protest, 14 days. You tell me you were arrested yesterday with a clash with police. Why are you guys back here again today?
Yeah, so we've been out here for 2 weeks. They tried to shut us down yesterday, and we are determined to show them that despite arresting 30 plus students, we will still be back here. We're currently in front of the administration's office, telling them that we will stay here until they immediately divest from a genocide.
And you know, you guys had that clash with police yesterday. Any fears of a repeat of what happened? And does that deter you guys at all?
Yeah, I mean, yesterday was brutal. They took away canes from disabled students. They arrested students while having a panic attack. It was completely disgusting. Peppered spray.
I'm going to stop it there for a second. So you can see how, completely clear-eyed, clear-headed the protester is, that they're going to continue to protest the genocide. It doesn't matter what anyone does. That this is their obligation, that they have to do it. They feel an absolute moral obligation, and it's tremendous that she has the bravery to do that. How anyone could criticize this generation for fighting for what's right against the entire weight of the federal government and the state, in this case the DC government, right? Because the police responded to the mayor and the chief of police, who just didn't want to testify in front of a House subcommittee, Republican subcommittee. And she's like, we're not going to have any of that. We're going to keep coming back. We ain't stopping. Even though they took a cane away from a disabled student. Unbelievable stuff. And they're just going to keep fighting for what's right.
Punched students in the face. I mean, it was brutal, but we know that it's minuscule in comparison to what's going on in Gaza currently.
So this is amazing. She's like, right now, bringing it right back to Gaza right now. Yes, it's really bad what they did to us. They punched us. They shoved us around. But you know what? It's nothing compared to what the Gazans are suffering as a result of Israeli oppression and persecution and genocide.
And we plan to stay here until they divest from genocide, until they stop funding the genocide going on in Gaza, and we're determined to stay here, and no, we're not afraid.
All right, Selena, thank you for talking to us. And right here, that has been the attitude, really, from most of the protesters here. Their message is very clear, and they've been here since about 6.
So let me stop it. I was really impressed with this reporter. I mean, it's not like it was that hard to figure it out, but yet she says, hey, they're clear. There's no doubt. They're telling us exactly why they're here, what they want. They want their university to divest. They want them to get out of the business of supporting the genocide in Gaza. So I think, anyone who says, oh, we don't know why they're there, they're not clear, their message is muddied, it's extraordinarily clear. And if they tell you, oh, I don't know what those protesters want, either they're lying because they're, extremists, they're, Zionist, or they're, in the pay of the whatever, or they just haven't been paying attention.
30. They've been moving around this central block here near the George Washington University campus, and their message is clear. They want the university to divest. They want an end to this war in Gaza. And I do have to tell you, I walked amongst them. There are tents right here on the road. I was talking to Selena a little while ago, and she says they plan to be here until they are moved. We'll have more reports for you live here on DC News Now, but for now, I'm Tosin Fakile live by F Street and 19th Street in the district. Back to you, Chris.
All right, so really good reporting, really clear why the protesters are there. Anyone who tells you differently, they're trolls. They're trying to embarrass the movement because they can't, facts won't do it, because the facts demonstrate that the protesters are in the right. Their cause is just, and those who are against them are wrong. All right, join me, 240-242-5646. Started late today, so I guess I go till 1:30. I don't get those of you who think you have to work within the Democratic Party. The time for that has come and gone. And the Democrats that are cited as somehow morally superior, the AOCs, the Ilhan Omars, I always get that wrong. This is Ilhan Omar, right? Is it? I'm going to look that up right now, but I'll get it wrong again. I always so bad with names. The Rashida Tlaib's. Okay, Omar. They all voted for Jeffries. And if they really had the courage of what they claim is their convictions, they would leave the Democratic Party. You know, I get you want to get elected. I understand that. You know, you're saying, hey, if I run as a Green, I'll never get elected, right? It can't happen. But if I run as a Democrat, if I challenge an incumbent, or if there's an open seat, I could win. Look, AOC won. We've seen squad members win against powerful, relatively popular incumbents. It can happen. So my response to them is, okay, I get it. You wanted to be elected. You thought, perhaps correctly, probably correctly, that you had a shot running as a Democrat that you wouldn't have had running as a Green in certain districts. You got the support of Kyle Klinsky and the Justice Democrats and Cenk, and, you know, more power to them for what they started. I think it was a great idea. But now you're in the House. I don't think there's anyone in the Senate who you could call a squad member or a Justice Democrat or anything like that. Although you could say Bernie, of course, was before all of them, and then he's an independent. So he's not a Democrat, although he caucuses with the Democrats. But now you've got where you wanted to get. You have a name. You have a fundraising apparatus. You have institutions that support you, like DSA, for example, Our Revolution. Isn't it now time then to leave the Democratic Party? Why don't the most progressive Democrats, if they really care, and I would answer this because they don't care. They don't care enough anyway. Why don't they leave the Democratic Party and form their own? Well, I would say join the Green. We don't need yet another party. The Green Party, as exemplified by Jill Stein, not perfect. I got issues with them. They're still very invested in identity politics and the equity movement, which I do not support. I believe, again, everyone should have enough. No one should have too much. Not that we try to balance every scale, make sure that every, college and university has the exact same percentage of people of color in their student body as in the general population, and the professors match the demographic groups that they're drawn from. No, I don't buy that. What I do buy is that everyone should have enough and no one should have too much. And yes, we should absolutely fight against biases and racism, but the way you do that isn't by counting to make sure you have just the right number of people from each identity group in every single institution. That's not the right solution. So I'm not totally big on Stein when it comes to issues like equity and inclusion. Where I, of course, totally embrace her message is some form of economic justice where we all have health care, we all have education, we all have secure retirement, and no one has billions of dollars. It's not that we think billionaires shouldn't exist. We believe no one should have $1 billion. Of course, CNN framed it differently because it serves their interest to try to demonize people who believe in some kind of economic justice, since they're at the top of the heap, and that's who they represent, and that's who owns them, and that's who pays their salaries. They don't want any message that demands some kind of true, fair, just distribution of wealth. They don't want any message like that to gain any traction. So if the progressive Democrats, or whatever you want to call them, really believed in some kind of true justice and peace, they would leave the Democratic Party. There's no way you can, at this point, when you have power, some little bit of power, some base, you cannot stay in the Democratic Party. United Nations General Assembly just today reported backs Palestinian bid for membership. Resolution does not give Palestine full membership, but recognizes them as qualified to join and extend rights. Now, one of the arguments against this is that Palestine isn't really a country, right? And it really isn't. It's not independent. Everything they do is subject to veto by the Israeli military. Their borders are porous. in one direction, in other words, Israelis move into Gaza, move into the West Bank with impunity and immunity. The other way, there are big barriers, and when some Palestinians broke through, they did rampage on October 7. But you could make an argument: Palestine isn't a real country. It's not really a united country. It's occupied. It's occupied lands. But Israel rejects that argument. They say, no, they're not occupied. The New York Times doesn't let you use the word occupied to describe the West Bank or Gaza. So I guess that theory is, no, they're really independent. They're not occupied. They're an independent state. So if as Israel claims, as the New York Times claims, Palestine is independent, not occupied, what possible justification could there be for denying them UN membership? Well, there ain't one. But the U.S. voted against it. The Joe Biden administration said, nope. Palestine doesn't get any rights under the United Nations. They don't get to join. They don't get to come before the UN and say, we need to be protected from Israeli aggression like Ukraine did. Nope. No. Palestine's not a country. I don't know what it is, but it's not a country. Well, it's occupied territory. And in the end, the real solution, right, the right solution is that they aren't a country. They're part of whatever you want to call it. One nation from the river to the sea. I guess you can't really call it Israel because Israel has so tainted, has so, destroyed the brand name Israel by its actions that you have to come up with a different name. But yeah, that's the answer. That's the only answer. One nation from the river to the sea. But if you don't believe that, if like the United States, you support a two-state solution, as Joe Biden says he does, if like Israel, you say, no, they're certainly not part of Israel. But at the same time, they're not occupied lands either. Well, if that's your view, then you have no argument, as far as I can tell, no legal, no intellectually consistent argument for opposing UN membership. It's just you don't want them to be members because you want to be able to kill and, strike against them at will. That's the Democratic Party leadership that voted against UN membership. So I say to Rashida Tlaib, I say to Ilhan Omar, got it right that time, I say to AOC, I say to Ro Khanna, if you're, as you should be, disgusted by this, if you find this abhorrent, then why don't you leave the Democratic Party? What's in it for you? Aren't you tainted by its actions? Aren't you now guilty because you're part of an institution that is doing such harm? I think AOC once said, well, if we had a better system, I wouldn't be in the same party with Joe Biden. Now, she's campaigning for Biden. She's demanded nothing from him in return. There's been no conditions for her support. Fine. Okay, that's who she is. This is who the Democratic Party is. Joe Biden, for many of them, the guy who vetoed or voted against and vetoed in the Security Council any move to grant UN membership to Palestine. The guy who's been almost completely full-throated in his support of Israel, but has made a few noises and squeaks around the edges. That's not good enough. Or I should say it differently. That's not bad enough for a number of Democratic electeds. So Jackie Rosen, I think she's from Nevada. Nope. The administration should not do anything that undermines Israel's ability to defeat Hamas. So that's a Democrat, right? That's a woman, that's a leader in the same party as AOC and Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib and Ayanna Pressley. The same exact party. Richard Blumenthal from Connecticut, when in response to Biden's statement that we can't, provide weaponry if Israel's going to use it to kill civilians, which, by the way, is the law. U.S. law says you can't provide weapons to countries that use them against civilians. That was one of the arguments against giving weapons or selling weapons to Saudi Arabia, is they use it against civilians. So Richard Blumenthal says, I don't know what the president meant, but we have to continue to provide the support Israel needs to defend itself. It's not defending itself. Israel's not defending itself. Israel is killing people in an adjoining region. Just flat out murdering them. Moral atrocities. They're not defending themselves. They're actually making themselves less safe. So Blumenthal is just lying or remarkably misguided. So is that the party? Are these people, and there are plenty of other Democrats who are cited by this, but by the way, they're cited positively. That's from Jewish Insider. They agree with Rosen. They agree with Blumenthal. There's others, John Fetterman, Chris Coons, fellow Delawarean. Is that a word? Are they such a thing as a Delawarean? I'm not sure. Fellow person from the state of Delaware with the president saying, we really have to protect, I don't like everything that Israel's doing, but, we don't have to stop them, exactly. So that's the Democratic Party. And that is the Democratic Party of Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Ayanna Pressley, AOC, Ro Khanna. That's their party too. And if you want to argue, well, they're doing what they can. No, they're not. They're not at all. They voted for Jeffries to be their leader. They voted, some of them, for, I think Katie Porter did, right? They voted for Mike Johnson to be their leader in the House, their speaker. They're on the same side as Lindsey Graham. We need a break, a hard break with the Democratic Party. It's got to end. And until it does, this is just going to continue. I will be discussing this with somebody who disagrees with me pretty strongly, I think. Charlie Cooper, we agree on a lot. We don't agree on this. He'll be with me Tuesday. Hope you catch that program. Let me make sure I get that slide up correctly before I share it with you. I saw on Facebook, Twitter. No, Facebook. Yeah, it is Facebook. I'm looking at that. I'm trying to figure out what it is. Okay, so it was on Facebook, a post that at first I kind of liked. I don't know if you've been following the story, but after the Republican Congress went after these university presidents for, on the bogus charge that they're not sufficiently pro-Israel and anti-Palestine. No, they're plenty anti-Palestine, and they're plenty plenty biased against Palestine, and plenty fully in support of the genocide, as far as I can tell. Jewish or not, Manu Shafiq, a Muslim from Egyptian, fully in support of what they're doing. Black or not, the former president of Harvard, Claudine Gay. No, we got to crack down on those Israelis. On the anti-Israeli protesters. Yep, she was right there with them. Jewish. Granberg is the president of George Washington University. I'm assuming from the name Granberg she's Jewish. I don't know for a fact, but I'm going to guess she is. So the Republican Congress claiming that, there's all this terrible anti-Semitism out there, grandstanding, called in some public school leaders and raked them over the coals, supposedly. And a Facebook friend of mine praised them. Unsurprising, the heads of public school districts did better in congressional hearings than Ivy League university presidents because our civil servants aren't dependent on big donors. So that was my initial takeaway too, was, oh, they did a pretty good job. They said, no, it's not, we're not seeing so much anti-Semitism, like you're overstating it and you're kind of grandstanding. I think one of the statements was I don't think they used the word witch hunt, but you're trying to get gotcha moments. I think someone maybe from New York City said which we'll hear from him in a second. I believe it's a him. You're looking for gotcha moments. Most of us, we're doing what we can to protect students, but this isn't the biggest problem. So I like that. I'm good with that. So that's why I gave it a like and a excellent take. So then I later on revised it. You can see what I revised that. Have to withdraw my heart and my excellent take. This was a particularly low moment at the hearing where our public servants appeased the right-wing haters, and of course, in both parties. We just heard from some of them, Jackie Rose and the other. So here's the clip. I really wanted to show this, where rather than take on the right-wingers, the extremists, the haters in both parties, they appeased them. And I did, I saw this headline from World Socialist Web. And, sometimes I feel like, and I think this is one of the reasons I may not get as big an audience as I like, because I'm not really as far to the left as some people are. I don't totally, I look at stuff from World Socialist Web and I'm like, you miss a lot, right? And some of your language, I wouldn't go as far as you go. But I think they pretty much got it here. At House hearing on anti-Semitism, and I love how they put it in quotes because it's not real, school officials placate GOP fascists, back suppression of anti-genocide protests. So then it says, is it really, that seems a little strong, right? I mean, a little bit farther than I would go. And maybe it is. Maybe that's just not quite accurate. But it's not really inaccurate either. So let's play the clip. This is from YouTube. It is not from WSWS, not from World Socialist website. Again, I'm not a socialist. I don't think we all should have exactly the same. People have different terms for socialist, but socialism ultimately means it really does mean no more private property, right? It really does mean that. So I think there are certainly areas of our country that, of any country that should be socialized. Of course, medicine, education to a significant degree. It's okay to have private colleges and universities as long as we have a very robust state and system, which we do. Too expensive, there are ways to address it, but education, definitely need socialized education. So there are areas, essential services that need to be the police. But like I've said before, the private sector does a great job building doors. We don't need that to be socialized. So what we need is what every society in the world has, a mix. But the mix has to be where you regulate capitalism, you regulate the private sector significantly, you force it consistently to compete against each other. You don't let any actor get too big, too powerful. And at the same time, you have a robust public sector as well to guarantee that you have all human needs are met. Here is, so I'm just bringing that up to say, yeah, I don't totally agree with the World Socialist website either. And I think this is making a problem for me because I'm really not as extreme as people think. On some issues, and against certain people and against certain ideas that are pernicious and have taken hold, I'm very, very harsh. But no, I'm not that far. I'm not, a leveler. And I'm not a social justice warrior. I have my own views. They're pretty unique. Here's from the hearing why I'm so unwilling to embrace the narrative that these public school officials and reps are so great.
The phrase "from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," is that anti-Semitic? I think most.
So of course it's not. I mean, there's no way it could be considered anti-Semitic. It's absurd to claim that. It's like you would say, well, free the slaves is anti-white. No. It's not. Free the slaves in 1840 Georgia was not an anti-white statement. It meant free the slaves. That's what it meant. It didn't mean kill the white people. From the river to the sea does not mean kill the Jewish people. It means we need a country where we're free. And we're not. That's what it means. It's really simple.
Jewish people experience that as anti-Semitic, and as such, it is not allowed in our schools.
You would say. So the DC, the NYC schools chancellor, placating this extreme right-winger, his name is it Aaron Dean? Did I get that right? I'm not certain. Who apparently is a guy who's trafficked in the replacement theory, which is, I guess, which according to the World Socialist website, I couldn't confirm this, but he's clearly very, very far to the right. There's no reason to think he's pro-Jewish in any way, but now he sets himself up as this staunch defender of the Jewish people. And so unfortunate.
Jewish people experience that as anti-Semitic, and as such, it is not allowed in our schools.
I don't get that, because some Jewish people claim it's anti-Semitic. You don't allow it in your schools. I don't understand that. I truly, truly don't. You know, there probably are some Chinese people who don't like it when you criticize the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese government and what China's doing to the Uyghurs and what China has already done and continues to do in Hong Kong. I'm sure there are Chinese people who experience that as anti-Chinese. Well, you know, too damn bad. Suck it up. It's not anti-Chinese. It's saying the government there is doing bad things. There are a lot of Americans who hate when you criticize the American government. Well, too bad. This is absurd because some people claim falsely, wrongly, that this is anti-Semitic. You ban it?
It is.
I would say it's anti-Semitic.
Ms. Silvestri.
It is if the intent is the destruction of the Jewish people, yes.
And it is. And it is. And so I would say.
Well, it is not the intent is the destruction of the Jewish people. That's absurd. It's absolutely not.
I'd put you down as a yes. You're okay with that? A yes?
Yes.
Ms. Ford Murtho.
It is if it is calling for the elimination of the Jewish people in Israel. And I will also say that I recognize that it does have different meaning to different members of our community.
I'm going to go yes. I'll put you down yes.
All right. This is absurd. I mean, they're placating this hater. Let me get that off.
And it is. And it is. And so I would say I'd put you down
as
yes.
So they're placating a hater. You can't be impressed with that. No, you say, no, it's not. It's simply not. Those words aren't. Do some people who may hate Jewish people, all Jewish people say it? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe they do. There are some, I suppose. But there are Jew haters who embrace that interpretation, who say, no, you should never say from the river to the sea. There are Jew haters who are on the side of Israel. So I'm not going to give these educators one bit of slack. That was wrong. It was a terrible thing to say. They appeased the hater. They appeased hate. All right, I promoted early in the program I was going to get to one of my critics. Excuse me, I got a little something in my eye that's bothering me. That's one thing I liked about radio, right? I could futz around, I could poke at my ear, what have you, and no one could see it. Can't do that on my live stream. So this is from one of my commenters. By the way, it's I believe this was posted, right? I'm gonna cut and paste some stuff that wasn't posted, but I believe this was posted at the YouTube site. Some I got in a personal email, but I think this was posted. So, and their email is referenced. So I'm not gonna say names, but I'm gonna say it's. I don't think I'm giving anything away because the email is referenced in the post that. I'm going to read to you now. So I believe you and the vast majority of your occasional listeners, a little dig occasional, I wish I had, I don't know if there's a vast majority, right? I mean, I don't know how much is the vast majority of what? I think I got 20 from yesterday's video. Which is pretty good for me, actually. Although I believe you and the vast majority of your occasional listeners might call themselves progressive, the vast majority seem to have more mainstream viewpoints, your count of subscribers versus your daily listener count supports this idea. So the point is, yeah, I've got over 200 subscribers, but maybe 1/10, if I'm lucky, sometimes will watch the videos within the day or two of posting. I don't know. I don't know what it means. I mean, I think if you look at other channels, they get 1/10 of their subscribers are watching too. I don't think that my numbers are particularly out of line in terms of the percentile, but yeah, my views are pretty dogmatic, and I'm pretty strong in them. I don't think they're so extreme, but they're strong views, right? And they're pretty unique. I don't know that calling for a gas, for example, I support a gas tax. I don't support nationalizing the oil companies. There are people who support nationalizing the oil companies. That, to me, is a lot more extreme. A gas tax is just using, to me, that's actually a pretty mainstream, reasonable view. I know it really upsets people. I know they get really angry. Oh, you don't care about poor people. You don't care about the harm that your gas tax will cause, which is just not true, because I always talk about it. By the way, this commenter has been very critical of my call for the much higher taxes on gasoline. I, of course, care, but that's why I say the revenue should be returned to the people. The purpose of the tax is to disincentivize the consumption of oil and gas, which is destroying our planet, and coal, which are destroying our planet. But that's hardly an extreme view. An extreme view, again, would be let's nationalize the oil companies. And that, by the way, is embraced by a lot of people. And if I called for that, I don't think people would say, oh, you don't care about poor people and you this and you. No, but nationalizing the oil companies wouldn't necessarily stop us from consuming oil. What would stop us from consuming oil is by making it much more expensive. So that's the solution, obviously. But it's a solution that a lot of people don't like. And I don't know what to tell you. I mean, sorry, but yeah, we do have to consume less oil and gas if we want to save the planet for the next generation, much less for future generations beyond that. Yeah, I'm going to just give this again. Please do. Hey, where is my subscribe? There we go. Please do subscribe. Oh, I made it nice and big in that one. Hope you'll like and subscribe this video. So yeah, I don't know that I have a particularly low percentage of viewership versus subscriber base, maybe a little bit of it, and so maybe some people, they hear something. This is what really happens is that people hear something I say and they like it, and they're like, wow, that's kind of unique, that's different, he has a different take, and then they subscribe, and then I say something they don't like, and so they don't. I mean, that's what happens. But I got to say what I believe. That's why I do it. If I didn't say what I believe, then I wouldn't do it. There'd be zero purpose. The only reason for me to do this is present views that I think are not opinions and facts, that are not widespread, that are not disseminated, that you can't get elsewhere. That's the only reason I do this. So now the claim is my issues and solutions are too idealistic, and I'm not open to revisions of your positions. Okay, well, I disagree with that. I think I am open to revisions if the evidence supports revising them. So if you disagree, just tell me what I've said that you think is wrong. Specific, you said this, here's why I think it's wrong. And by the way, this poster does do that. He did send me, comments that why he believes my views are incorrect and what the evidence is that supports that. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. But then we have a discussion. Okay, you think this disproves that? Here's why I don't think it. For example, I say we need to raise the price of gas and oil because it's destroying our planet. So you could say, well, I don't agree with you, and here's why. I don't agree with you because I don't think raising the price of gas will reduce consumption. So then we can have a debate. The evidence shows it does. When gas prices go higher, people drive less and they consume less and they carpool more and they bike so we know that this is the way to stop it. We know that when you make anything more expensive, people consume less of it. So then you could say, well, it is going to hurt people, but there's or it's going to reduce the price. It's going to reduce consumption. You're right about that. But it's going to hurt people, so you got to not do it. So, of course, it's going to hurt people if you rely on your vehicle, if you rely on transit that's gas or coal or, that burns some kind of fossil fuel. Yeah, it's going to cost more money. So that's going to hurt you. You'll have less resources for everything else. So what do? We take the money we collect at the pump and we return it to the people. And so that will give you more than you actually paid, because poor people, struggling people, working people use less per capita than rich people who fly places and drive gas guzzlers and the like. So there's my answer. And then you could say, and the best rejoinder to that is, yes, but wealthy people have a much greater ability to cut back than poor people and working people. And my answer to that is, well, when that happens, and if that happens, then we look at other ways to redistribute wealth, the poor, struggling, and working people. Then we look at much higher top income, and which I think we should do anyway, in estate taxes. And we look at ways to broaden and increase public transit, which will happen anyway, as a matter of course, if we raise the tax. So, we can dispute that. You could point to a society and say, well, this society has really, really high gas taxes, and it sucks for poor people. And my response would be, what society is that? If you look at countries where gasoline is very expensive, you actually tend to have less wealth and income inequality. You have a tighter safety net, like Scandinavia, like Europe, where, by the way, the price of gas and oil should be higher than it is. It hasn't gone up in a long time. But, again, we debate these issues. We have a discussion. We don't, in my opinion, say, well, you're unrealistic or you're too idealistic. No. So my comment is always, hey, if you disagree with me, why am I wrong? What's your evidence? So the commenter actually responds directly to that point. And I really appreciated this. And when I saw this, I went back and looked at the email to which I think the commenter was responding, was relying. You can't build a governing consensus if you can't even convince the majority of your subscribers. That is for sure true, 100% on that. And I wish I was doing a better job. And if you don't find what I'm saying convincing, I really want to know why. What am I saying that you think is incorrect? Why? What evidence doesn't support your view? I'll listen, I'll respond to it, and you can respond to what I say. And then the point is, YouTube allows you to continue to live in an isolated bubble because its AI and analytics won't allow posting negative comments. I don't think that's correct. I think there's something wrong with that statement. What I want to say is, I wish, how they used to have the thumbs up, thumbs down? You can't do that anymore. Or you can do a thumbs down, but nobody sees it. I think that's too bad. I'd love to see those thumbs downs for videos that you could see, including my own. I think the problem isn't so much that you can't post negative comments, but they have length restrictions and the like. By the way, you know what I haven't even checked today? And this is something I always say I'll do and I never do. And by the way, there you go. You can hear me. I don't check, and I've got to do this, the comments, right? I haven't been good about that. And I always say I'll look at my chat. And there's only so much I can do. There's just I've got two hands and, one head. I don't see any live chat, but what's weird is I've seen chats after my program, so I wonder whether people are chatting and I just miss them. I don't know. 240-242-5646. So I think you can post negative comments, but there are length restrictions and the like. And then they note, even if we cite sources of information that conflict with your ideas. So I want to get to that because that's really the meat of it. And this poster, and I believe the two areas where they disagree most strongly with me, most vociferously, are the fossil fuels tax and Ukraine, because I think we should stop shipping arms to Ukraine. So I think those are the two areas. So I got this email, and I want to show you, well, I'm not going to show you the whole email, but segments of it that take on my position. So continued the response is, search results make clear continued Russian occupation would be disastrous for Ukrainians. The occupation is characterized by systematic human rights abuses, forced Russification, and the dismantling of Ukraine's identity. A grim reality that must be urgently addressed. Okay, I agree with that, right? Russia's not a place I would want to ever live. It's an authoritarian state. It's autocratic. I mean, there are lots of bad places in the world. I don't know that Russia's the worst, but it sure ain't one of the best. So it is bad, and it sucks for Ukrainians who are living under occupation. No argument. But that's hardly a defense for continuing the war. The occupied folks there are suffering in large part because of the war. If the war were over, I'm not saying it would become all sweetness and light, but then you negotiate, instead of killing each other, instead of having armies on either side shooting at each other, and right now Russia's got the advantage. Certainly a lot of Ukraine, 18-20% of Ukraine is in Russian control, depending on what you call Ukraine. It's not help. The victims of Russian aggression aren't benefiting from this war. They're suffering because of it. If you care about them, you should be calling for a ceasefire too. You should be calling for negotiations too. You should be calling for an end of ongoing, endless support for Ukraine. Because what we're doing now isn't working. It's making things worse in Ukraine, not better. So I don't think your sources really support the view that you present. And in fact, I'll give you, this is from one of them. I don't know which of the sources. There were several. So I should have perhaps identified each source. But this was from one of the links. And again, yes, it sucks to be under Russian occupation. No, it's not something I would ever want for myself or anyone I care about. But the way to end that occupation isn't to continue this endless war. It's to try to bring it to an end with no more casualties and to negotiate. That's the way you end it. That's the way you protect the people who are the victims of Russian aggression. And it seems so clear. And if you disagree, you say, well, that's not true. You're naive. You're naive. Okay, maybe I'm naive. But we already know this isn't working. So let's try something else. 2 years after the full-scale invasion, many people are still living under Russian control, even though we've been fighting that invasion the whole time. And the number hasn't changed. And those people are losing hope because the failed counteroffensive only made things worse for them. It's combined with the constant fear of being kidnapped and interrogated and tortured. So you know what? Russia's not going to listen to us. We're the enemy. They don't care what we say. But if we stop funding this war, if we pushed Ukraine to go to the bargaining table, the negotiating table, then we could bring to the table the concerns, the situation, the problems faced by those under Russian occupation and address it, including returning some of the land to Ukraine, coming up with some kind of demilitarized zone, guaranteeing Russian security or the Russian-speaking majorities in eastern Ukraine some kind of security. Those are all things we could be talking about with Russia that would actually make life better in the end, would have a real, or at least let me put it this way, would have a real chance of making life better. So I don't, if the argument is, if the allegation is, I don't get how bad it is for those in the occupied region of Ukraine, I get it. I'm saying that this war, by promoting it, by supporting it, by fomenting it, by keeping it going, rather than trying to negotiate and provoking it, rather than trying to negotiate with Russia, is making things worse, is hurting the people that you rightly want to help. And then there's this. So this is a different, maybe that's what I just showed you. That was from that post there about how the Russian occupation has not, the situation is bad, and the people who are living in the occupied region, have not gotten anything out of the failed counteroffensive. So, I think the term is really important. Failed counteroffensive. It hasn't helped. It hasn't made things better. It's only made things, if not worse, it's certainly not solved anything. And there was some quotes from Amnesty International, people who go into Kiev now from outside and they see all the bombed out buildings and they see the rubble And, a city that once, there was joy, happiness, music, now it's grim. Well, that's war, right? That's war. You want it to get nice again, then stop the killing. Don't ship more arms. Don't ship more weaponry, pushing for a solution that's only been a failure. All right, that's going to do it for me. It is Friday afternoon. I'm looking forward to my weekend. I hope you have a great one. We'll be with Arlen on Monday and Charlie Tuesday.